the church, now correct me if I'm wrong here, the church was not the thing that led you to your healing. Do you think that's a fair assessment? I don't mean the religion, the relationship to God. I mean the community of the church and how you were engaging with it didn't bring you to your healing.
No,
No, okay. Do you feel that, and this doesn't need to be a specific example, that this is not a damning example of all Christian institutional churches, but do you feel that what you see in a lot of the churches is a place for people to heal, or a place for people, whether they be at the, I don't know what you call the podium in a Christian church, or in
pulpit.
the pulpit or in the pews, that they're actually places to play out, more so play out cubs and cabs than they are to bring forth any meaningful transformational healing. Do you think that's a
Yes.
fair assessment of most institutionalized Christian churches right now?
It's absolutely fair. In fact, this is my observation that like at a deeper level, what most people, uh, at a soul level, they come to church because they want transformation. People really do want transformation. Like they know. It's like we all know we live in the matrix, and we all know we want to take the pill that's going to get us out of it. So one of the places we go is to the church. Unfortunately, when you compare and contrast, for example, what happens in an ayahuasca ceremony and what you undergo, the ordeal that you undergo to clear away all the stuff so that you can live from your heart, and what happens in the context of a Sunday morning service as a different kind of ceremony, there's virtually no comparison. My belief is that people show up at church and they're kind of hoping maybe we're going to get that. Maybe I'm going to be invited to undergo an ordeal and an initiation into a whole new possibility for human 2.0. Because that's really what I want. Because what I've got going here, is just, it's just not like doing it for me. So, but it never happens. It rarely happens. It's just, there's a bishop named Barbara Brown Taylor who tells the story of, her husband never went to church with her, but he went to Sundance ceremonies of local indigenous people. And these are very rigorous, as you know. Sweat lodges, dancing for 4 days, fasting, it's very rigorous. So he goes at the end of the week, she brings her church casserole at the end of that ceremony, sees this figure walking towards her from about 200 yards away. The guy's emaciated, eyes are on fire. He gets closer and she realizes, holy smokes, that's my husband. His first words to her upon meeting are, "Your church is too easy."
I laughed out loud when I read that part in your book. Honestly, I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, right? So, I don't want to, like you, I spent 30 years in a church. There's good people doing good things for the world. But for whatever reasons, like I felt in the last 10 years of my ministry, myself, something's missing. And I started talking about, we got to start doing shadow work. Like something's going wrong here, because people get together, if they haven't done this work of clearing up cubs and cabs and getting at their trauma signature, the community life just becomes a shit show. Because it's all these interacting sensitivities and you get in conflict, and then, it's organized around the most neurotic personalities, and so I kept talking about, the core practice, never mind prayer, meditation, contemplation, all good things, but the core practice is we got to get at this other stuff. But to be honest, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to get there. And, it's over for me. But if I had any advice for a new person, it was like learn a little bit about what we're talking about and make your community a safe space so that people can feel safe enough to be dismantled. Because after all, that's what Jesus was talking about.
Mm.
It's like,
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to shift gears, or ask a specific question. If you have something you want to finish saying there, please do.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, I'm good.
Um, I think it's fair that most of the people who are going to listen to the show, most of my listening constituency, is probably people on a spectrum from they understand that religion, institutionalized religion, isn't for them, to people who flat out, maybe hate it or despise it. But there might be people who are still sort of in the midst of church or whatever that are listening specifically because it's you talking and they've heard about you. And it's probably fair to say that, anyone that knows about Christianity knows that Christianity is not one thing, and that different churches have a variety of different ways of showing up, and that even in some of them, people do have transcendental type experiences. Like, it's all over YouTube, some of the most hilarious, like, what do they call it? Televangelist kind of stuff, and people are screaming, and my mother went to she's Pentecostal, and so I would go to a Pentecostal church when I was a kid, and I would see people look like they were in a trance. I didn't understand it. They were shaking and whatever. Maybe they're feigning, playing the role, whatever, but maybe they're transcendental. But without the shadow work, there's a very good chance that'll only just reinforce the spiritual ego in the same way that taking psychedelics might reinforce the spiritual ego if it's not held in the right context. Do you feel like that's a fair statement?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the key. And we shouldn't therefore assume that, for example, that people are doing lots of ayahuasca ceremonies or are necessarily doing the kind of thing that we're talking about here. There's enough spiritual bypassing and flight to unity in those ceremonies as well. It's rigorous work, and I think these medicines give people the opportunity to do this work, but it's a whole other conversation, James, but there's a lot of rhetoric around forgiveness, for example, in ayahuasca ceremonies that I think represent sort of a premature flight to unity.
Mm-hmm.
When this trauma starts coming up, and for example, then there's an assumption that's, well, naturally you just have to forgive what happened to you. Well, people, they're just discovering it. Like, give them a little bit of time to integrate this. And so I've got a slightly different take than the Christian take on forgiveness, but maybe that can be for another conversation.
Right. Or for the listeners who are, and I imagine there'll be a lot of them very interested in what you have to say here and would love to dive a lot deeper into your work by reading your book.